ready, Mr. Mayor.
I will call the March 20th council meeting to order and recognize Councilwoman Condon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight I wanted to do the prayer from St. Francis of Assisi because I think it's always relevant. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Used to do that in 6th grade.
Huh? I like that.
It was good. Next is the reading of the minutes from March 6, 2018. Is there a motion for approval as written?
So move.
A second.
I think second. Yes, second. Okay.
Well, I have
Okay, go ahead.
I have a change.
Okay.
Under executive session, I believe it should read, Mr. Waite seconded the motion and it passed 3-2 as opposed to 5-2.
Any other changes?
No.
All in favor then of the minutes being approved as amended, do so with show of hand. And next is the administrative briefing. Mr. Brown, anything you need to add on the briefing?
Yes, sir. I talked to Chief Sonnenfeld today, and they finally got the permit for getting the asbestos out of their little daycare center over here on Charles Street, and they've signed the contract to have it cleaned up and demolished. So that should be started next week. Chief Perry has added another person to code enforcement, a civilian, so you know, and he's been out there diligently working. I don't know how many abatement letters he's given out. Stole my thunder. And he's very familiar with police procedures, so he got it worked out really good. Like, it's the former chief, for whoever doesn't know yet. Lexington County Municipal Association dinner is in Casey on Thursday, April the 14th, and I need to know who would like to attend. Lexington County Municipal Association is kind of a spin-off from the regular municipal association, just for Lexington County. I know the mayor has participated a couple times. I've been the one, but I just need to know.
When is it again?
Again, it's Thursday, April 19th. It'll be in Casey.
You said 19th or 14th? 19th.
Be hosted by Casey. And that's all I have.
Yeah, they hadn't had a meeting in a long time. I thought they'd kind of disbanded.
Well, they had one for December, I think.
But it got canceled
Yeah.
because of the weather and something. Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Brown on the briefing? Seeing none, next is the code enforcement update.
Okay. Good evening. Code enforcement update for March the 20th. Code enforcement division, I'm ready to buy. A breakdown of what they did in February. Unsightly violations, total of 8. Signs removed, 15. Conditions for collection, 15. Animal complaints, 2. Vehicle violations, 20. Zoning violations, 3. Business checks, 8. Dilapidated properties, 1. Miscellaneous complaints, 15 total. and they were related to the a variety of investigations that may or may not have been in a violation. So if anybody said, there's a dilapidated property at so-and-so, and they went by there and it was not a dilapidated property, those are the 15 that they actually investigated that were, may or may not have been a violation. I didn't see the tickets on here. I asked Sergeant Dale for that. They wrote 3 total tickets in February, 2 for illicit discharge and 1 for barking dog.
And before you flip, just for my, I keep forgetting, but that collections, what is that? Conditions for collections?
That would be for anything of trash-related, carpeting,
Oh, okay.
big ticket items that you have to call about.
Okay.
That they would have to make phone calls. We've been doing a lot of phone calls for our citizens who have big ticket items. I'm ready to buy. Yep, thank you. You see the OneDrive access for code enforcement. This is a new thing that Captain Dennis actually looked into. I wish he was still here. I'd give him the props for this, but and him and Mr. Brown worked on this as well. It is a cloud-based app, I guess. I'm not really too savvy on computers, so I hope I'm getting this right. But it is an up-to-date business. It has up-to-date business license information and rental property listings. Basically, the guys can go on there on their computers, and they can access it when Vive, of course, updates it about every day or two, and then it's real time. So they can go on there and see who has a business license. If 123 Towing had a business license, or if there were a rental property that was listed that Vi had that either didn't pay or pay, and then get out with those particular people.
So, Chief, this I made a recommendation that we look into partitioning the disk and being able to do that. This is a result of that?
Right, they decided that the cloud-based would work better than the petition. That way you're still not letting anybody else into your laptop.
Okay.
Or car. But we have to pay for it, it's cloud again, but that way all the rental properties and business like.
It's all up to date. Yeah,
So everybody can access it.
that's great.
And they can do other things as well. We can actually use it on their patrol side to send out the schedule, anything that we have on our computer, we can send out to the patrol guys as well, so they're getting it real time as well. It's a really good tool. I wish I were more computer savvy to know what I'm talking about, but of course I don't. But it's like I said, it's a OneDrive access, and then Vi can put anything she wants from her laptop or computer, and we can pull it up right then.
Right.
So I think it's a good tool so far, Ms. Vi, is that right? You enjoying it? Okay. Next slide. So far, the progress for the Ordinance 1726 education phase for the front yard parking. I asked Sergeant Dale, this is strictly for 1726. This has got nothing to do with rental properties. And he said, yes, these numbers are coming from just parking in the street. So total, we have identified, Irmo PD has identified 448. Of those, 163 still need to be contacted, but we have went face-to-face or had phone contact with 347 citizens out of the 448. That was a recommendation we put out, and within 3 days we had a lot of pages of a lot of things that we had to go through and enter those, but it worked out very well. So, so far we are at 448. That number has increased today. I don't know the total number today because Officer Stokes was out doing that notifications for these people. So that is a still ongoing process, but we're still looking into it. I know we were thinking of 150, but of course you see that we've blown that number way out. So I'm hoping we're close to the end, but I don't know a finish line number, but we're still working.
Out of that 448, how many of those are rental properties?
None are rentals. This is all dealing with front yard parking for 1726. That's what I
Yeah, but how many people are rental properties are parking in the front yard?
All these are people who own their properties.
Okay.
I asked Sergeant Dale, is this strictly related to 1726? Not a rental property, because if it was a rental property, it'd be a different ordinance. It'd be abated right away for parking in their front yard under the rental property agreements. So this is strictly people who own their homes who park in the front yard, and we've been trying to educate and advise. The next slide. So we had a situation, not really a situation, I'm gonna call it one of our officers went out, put in an abatement on a house and said, call this number immediately, and it was our dispatch number. The person called it. Dispatch said, I don't know why you're calling, and it didn't have a contact person to anything. It was one of our better code enforcement officers who did this. But so what we did as a police department, we came up with this little thing here. I'll pass it around as well.
Thank you.
So what code enforcement's been doing is, and also patrol guys at night, they've been posting this with the ordinance, a copy of the ordinance, with the name of the officer, contact number, and the date posted. Now, what this does is it allows us to get that information from a person. They can call us if they have any questions. It's clearly on there that we're trying to educate, and they can call us if they have any questions. But we still want to go by there. We're still trying to do that on the weekends. Code enforcement guys are coming out on Friday and Saturday now to try to get these face-to-face contacts. So we think it's working out a lot better than it was, and that's all due because the code enforcement guys really want to make this work. So they really put a lot of effort into it. That's it for that. And just speaking of what Mr. Brown had mentioned, we are implementing the rental properties. We have a part-timer going out there and making contact with rental properties. I know there's probably about 600, is that right? 600 rental properties in town?
A little over 700.
700? Okay.
Now, is that based on the permits or based on the county thing?
Based on numbers that we know, not for the permit.
Okay.
You know how many permits you got off the top of your head, how many people have actually paid? They're not, because they're not due until April 15th.
But I mean, say last year, how many did we have?
So
Last year was just under 7. It was like
Oh,
680.
okay.
So I'll say 650 to speak. So say we got 650. We went by, the department went by and checked 87 properties, and we've abated 14 so far. And 5 of those were face-to-face. And they were just stumps in the yard and things like that, like broken windows or siding or something like that. So out of the 87, 14 were abated. So we're real excited about getting that person on, and he's having a good time. So
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all have any questions, or?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I do, Chief, I apologize. Have you made the change in the enforcement on second shift to go until 11? Is that right?
we've kept the code enforcement guys still working a 9 to 9 rotation. What we've done is we've implemented 3 of some of the best patrol officers that we have for code enforcement. They've been around a while. They understand code enforcement. And so they're assisting with the location and postings, and they're letting patrol. They're giving it to Sergeant Dale. So,
gotcha. Okay.
So we're getting patrol in there a little bit when they're not as busy, like you had mentioned, late at night, between the hours of 12 and 5. If they're not busy and they're checking our communities anyway, they see a violation, they check the computer. If it's not there, they're getting out with it. Because what happens is we really got flooded with patrol. They did a heck of a job. They turned in a bunch of papers, and we went through and checked the computer. But now we want them to actually get out as well and abate the nuisance when they find it, not just identify, because it was a lot. It was a lot. But everyone's on board, and we're all excited about getting this done. So it's top priority for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the amendments to the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda? Next is consideration of communications. Any consideration of communications?
I got something. We had I had a citizen call me and email me about a noise problem he's having at his house. And that's what we're going to be discussing later on. But I wanted to give that citizen an opportunity to address council, but I don't see him here yet. Anyway, he was telling me that in his house, literally, he's hearing the vibrations of his neighbor's stereo on his stereo in his kitchen, living room, or whatever. And he says it's,
Didn't I read that on Facebook?
yeah, I think you
Okay.
did, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, he was saying that he wanted to find out if there is anything he could do, or was there a law against that or whatnot. And I said, well, that's an interesting topic because you're talking about people's, I guess, lifestyle almost. You know, if they're having a loud stereo party or something and it's that loud it's disturbing you, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I thought it was somebody driving on the street with a loud stereo in their car, but it's not. He's saying it's literally in his house, and it's vibrating through the ground and rattling his, I guess, his china or something. But
Wouldn't the noise ordinance apply?
Yeah, and it applies.
No?
no,
I've talked to this gentleman already.
Are we going to do this under discussion, or, I mean, we got it on here for discussion.
well, that's fine. I'm just trying to let you know that this is what, you know, prompted that discussion item, okay? But we can, you know, like I said, I just want to let you know that this is a problem that this guy identified. He did reach out to me to talk about it, so.
Okay.
Any other consideration of communication? Next is presentation by citizens. This is where any citizen who would like to address council on anything that's on the agenda may do so at this time. All we ask is you give us your name and address for the record and which agenda item you want to speak to. Seeing none. Unfinished business, none. Next is new business, item A, ordinance 1804. This is the one that has to do with the changes to the rental. And I'm gonna ask Bob, is this the correct one? Because I know we had two, and then we.
This is the new one that got the
Okay, the one on the computer. Okay. Is there a motion for first reading of ordinance 1804? And I will make a motion so I can explain all that. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
This was an ordinance I think we passed, I can't remember how many years ago. Do you remember, Barry? Was it 10, 8, 9, or something like that?
It's been 2 or 3 years, I think.
Oh, has it been? Okay.
Well, no, I take that back. It's been since Mark and
Yes,
been
that's-
on
that's-
council, so it's been in the last couple of years.
Well, we had one before that.
I think we made the most changes with these two.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we made, but I think it started way back then, because I think Jake was here back when we passed it first.
That's right,
Started
yeah.
collecting the fees, that's right, but we didn't have
Yeah.
as many restrictions.
And this is some changes that have been brought up, and then there's some minor changes on here, and then there's some rewording on here. The grass height is a change that we got the 8 inches all across the town on the regular property, so we changed that one. The parking spaces, I think it was worded a little bit different in the last one, and we changed it now to basically say no more than 2 vehicles at each home if it's a rental home, and no more than 4 vehicles if they have a double driveway 25-foot long. Some of this stuff, if I want to say if a business moves into town or wants to build a business, they have a lot of requirements they have to meet through their zoning. They have a parking thing based on square foot, based on use and all that kind of stuff. We also just recently updated the screening, buffering, landscaping, all that stuff to give more buffering between commercial property and residential, and to also require irrigation in the landscaping, which we didn't in the past. But a lot of this stuff is kind of that same thinking theory that if someone's going to invest in property for rental property, for an investment property, then they need to kind of do a little bit better job of keeping their property in order. Same thing we require businesses. Years ago, you could build a business, you could plant grass, you could and they could die, and there's nothing we could do. So we changed that to that irrigation. We also had in there you could plant 20 bushes, but they could be that tall, and we changed some of that to make them, just to kind of help soften the commercial next to the residential. And this is kind of some of the same stuff that there's a lot of investment companies out there now because of the better economy and different things, and also still an inventory of foreclosures that are buying properties for the purpose of renting them out and then reselling them at some point down the road. And I know they're in our town buying up certain ones, which is all good and well. It gets the properties occupied, but a lot of them are also doing the minimum amount to them, renting them out at the least they can, but they don't make a lot of money, so they can't do a lot of maintenance, and they don't. And I think that's some of the stuff we kind of need to address. The only things we really added to this was peeling paint. I think the old one doesn't mention anything about it. The dilapidated structures as far as shutters and gutters and that kind of stuff would apply to these homes as well. This one is just saying if it's a rental home, you got to keep the paint good. Doesn't have to be repainted, just can't be peeling. There's been some discussion on this annual fee. Right now, the annual fee is $50 for the first one, $50 for the second one, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. And if you don't get one at all and code enforcement finds out, it's $50 then. So there's no incentive to get it up front. Right now, it's $200 for the first one, $100 for each additional. But if you get it up front or you renew it every year or whatever, then it's only $100 and it's $50 for each additional. So really the first one is going up $50 from $50 to $100. And if they don't get one and they get caught, and I do know some people that have told me the same thing. Why should I get one? It's only $50 and it's $50 if I get caught 10 years down the road. So I think that might help address that. Somebody had asked, why is it going from 50 to 100? My answer was, if we got to do a little bit more work on these properties, whether it's code enforcement or somebody, then we need to create a little bit more revenue to offset that. So that's kind of what's driving that. We did do the thing about the boats and recreational campers and all like that not to be in front of the home, and we added the thing about they can be parked. I'm trying to see if I see it on here. I don't know if I, oh, that's
Boats
right.
and RVs.
I'm looking on the wrong one. I'm looking on this old one. But yeah, we add something in there about they can be parked in the backyard, just not in the front yard. I think that's been some of the complaints that I've heard from people when we were doing the parking in the grass. That, well, some of these homes are run on, they got boats and RVs in the driveway, that's why they can't put the cars there. So that would help resolve that. The number 20, the occupancy, Eric looked at it and came up with a state Supreme Court that's upheld or kind of passed a test, so to speak.
Language that came from the Supreme Court case, I believe the city of Columbia. It's the case where you probably all heard about it. They called it the brothel case because it was the thing about where if sororities and that sort of thing, and they upheld the language in the case. I think they subsequently have changed their code, so I don't believe this is presently their code, because I think there was a little bit of a public outcry about there not being allowed to have sororities and that sort of thing. But this language was upheld by our Supreme Court. It's verbatim cut from the language that the Supreme Court did uphold.
And I think, I can't scroll this thing up, but it says something about not more than 8. Some people have commented on that, asked me about that. And I told them I could have chose 6, I could have chose 16. I just started with 8. We can adjust that. I don't know.
Good.
And somebody had sent me a thing saying that HUD has a guidelines that says
10.
For a 5-bedroom or something to that effect. They use 2 per bedroom. The only problem with that is if you have a 3-bedroom home, that means 6. And I could see a family with 7 in a 3-bedroom. So, we can, somebody wants to amend that and adjust that, put 8 or 10 if it's a 5-bedroom or something, we can, but I wanted to just start somewhere. I think that's most of the stuff that, and then we added the clause about the water, sewer, and electrical service. All that stuff's got to be connected. There is no state law right now that says anybody's got to have sewer connected to their home. there's one that says if your septic tank breaks down, you gotta connect the sewer, but there's not one that says you initially had to, and after you connect to it, you could actually unconnect. But I felt like we could start with that in our rental home and at least make them, or make the landlord make sure.
Right.
Because a lot of this stuff, we won't be addressing it, so to speak, especially in a numbered home, but the landlord knows, okay, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then it's up to them to kind of do it and be honest and keep up with it. But that's kind of where that's coming from, and we can kind of go from there. And you second it, so.
Yeah. One of the things that I was asked about by a constituent was the occupancy thing, and I think it may make sense to go with the HUD guideline, unless you think that eight would fly.
I was looking at it strictly from the point of the original draft, said that it would be one family, but there was no definition of a family in the original draft, and I could see that the enforcement would be exceedingly difficult if we were just to say one family, because that would effectively, it would basically turn it into one of those towns like the areas in Clemson where they don't have any students. It has to be a family home. Can't be two people unrelated, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought just defining family was important for this, but I don't pass any judgment on
All
what
right.
you guys want to do as far as the number of residents. That's y'all's call.
So
I looked at that HUD thing, but I can imagine it's probably this big.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if we can just make it simple, that
I
would be.
think just change the 8 to 10, but are you finished?
that's fine.
Okay. This is not a rental home. This is owner occupied, 2 houses down from me. There is a couple. There is his mother, his mother's nephew, 2 grown children, and 3 grandchildren. It's a 4-bedroom home with a room over, but that's a lot of people and a lot of cars, but it works for them. And, I can see this happening more and more as the baby boomers age. I'm looking for a kid to move in with. I'm looking to see who's going to have the best house. So I think we see that, because nursing homes start at about $5,000 a month and go to about $7,000. That's a lot of money. I'm moving in with a kid. I'll pay him too.
We move in over here next to Irmo High School too, or Irmo.
I'm not going that, no, I'm going to live with a child.
I wanted to let you know that as far as if it comes to an actual owner-occupied home, there are constitutional cases that
Right.
prohibit the limitation of
Yeah,
of that in an owner-occupied. So I mean, this was strictly for rental.
I understand.
So if you want to move in with your kids, y'all can all live together.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking,
Like some of the apartment complexes, if you call them, they have limits on how many people in a 2-3 bedroom.
because they own it.
Yeah, because they.
It's up to them, that's fine. I just think in this case, we ought to make it 10. I don't want to go against HUD.
I would agree with you, Kathy.
Would y'all want to make a
Yeah.
motion to amend?
Yes.
And okay, so what's your,
You make a motion to amend from 8 to 10.
Yes.
and second?
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion on that part?
What happens when you get over 10 people?
Well, you got to throw somebody out.
Well, the landlord wouldn't be able to rent to somebody over 10.
10
That'd be up
people,
to
though,
them to control that.
if you have a 4-bedroom house, 10 people is a lot. I don't see, unless you have 5 bedrooms and a room over, I don't know where you're going to put everybody.
I got a 5-bedroom, and there's only 2 people
How many
living
people
in
in your house?
2.
Well, see, you're in code, you're doing
And see,
good.
on yours, if you're, and this is only addressing that, and it's really, it's up to the, because when this goes into the thing for
Yeah.
the application, they have to,
Yeah.
acknowledge they're gonna do that. Now, they may rent it to somebody with 11, and if we don't find out, I don't say we don't care, but if something were to happen and we're over there doing something and find out, then we could tell the guy, hey, And if you lose so many violations or whatever, then they can lose their thing. But it's kind of up to them to control that.
I understand that you want to control rental properties, but why is it do we care about the occupancy? Why do we care about occupancy of rentals?
Well,
What are we trying to correct? What problem are we trying to correct?
from what I've heard from people, and especially during this parking in the yard stuff, is, you know, a lot of those homes with the 4 or 5 cars are rental homes and that kind of stuff, or homes with X amount of people. And this is one way to kind of help cut back on that parking in the grass.
Well, wait a minute. Now, we're not talking about the parking in the grass.
Well,
we're talking about rental
is
properties.
Kind of help.
So how does
define
this fix that? We're not talking about parking in the grass. We got an ordinance for that already. Okay? I'm talking about the rental properties. Why do we care about how many people live in the house? What are we trying to correct?
That's up to you. I mean,
It's not up to me. We're trying to pass a law that says you can't have more than 6, 8 people, 10 people in a house. What are we trying to correct with that ordinance? What problem are we trying to correct? And if you say parking in the grass, I'm going to tell you we got an ordinance for that, parking in the grass. We just had a big debate about that for the last 6 months.
well,
That's
I'm
not
just
what we're trying to
responding
correct.
to stuff that people's brought up to my attention, and this is where I'm coming from, and that's that.
Well, I don't think we need it in here. I don't think we need to be concerned with how many people living in a house, especially a rental property. That's really none of our business. If they're not doing anything illegal, if they have a house that certainly can hold 8, 10 people, and they're doing fine, they can live there. We got that one family in California had 13 kids, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, they were living in a 4-bedroom house. Okay, and I mean they were chained down or whatever, but the fact that they had a big family, you know, we shouldn't be concerned with large families moving to the town of Irmo, wanting to move to the town of Irmo to take advantage of our school district. That's one of the reasons why I think we don't need to be worried about that.
There's one thing that applies here, and I just read it yesterday. So on Patty Grove Road, backing up to Bower Parkway, at the intersection of Bower and Piney Grove, you turn right. Just past the Microtel or whatever, there's a license in the works for a gentleman's club. We don't need no gentleman's clubs in Irmo. This is
Not in Irmo.
It's not in Irmo, but they're seeking it there, and
Right next to Costco.
I know that's why this 8 persons thing came up to start with, because we didn't want any brothels going around. I mean, we see what the police are doing now, and now we're gonna give them a bunch of brothels to look out for too. That's why it's here, is to make it a family-oriented thing, I believe. Is that right? Is that why it's there?
Well, I mean, I think all of it is, if you want to build an apartment complex, you got.
Yeah, that's different, yeah.
If you want to buy a rental home in a residential neighborhood, it's a single-family residential neighborhood, and you're trying to control how many people can live in a single.
See, now you're talking about control. See, this is what I'm saying. Why do we want to control how many people come and move in our town? What is your occupancy?
I could ask you why we put this thing on the agenda many years ago when you and Jake and everybody else passed it. Why?
Did you ask us
I'm
at the
asking-
time?
I can.
You didn't, though. You
I'm
voted
asking
for
now.
it.
Why did we even
You
do
voted for it, didn't you?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back.
Well, I
and look.
can't remember why we put it on the agenda years ago. Obviously, we had a need for it.
It's when we put it's when those pictures went up, wasn't it?
Yeah, when they took all the pictures and we voted on doing and it was agreed at that time too that we would
Yeah.
pass this thing and amend it over the years and make it work better and better and better.
I think it's to keep
look,
families in the home.
That's
rather
fine.
Than,
That's fine. But I don't like us controlling how many families or what size family can move to our town.
well, we're up to 10.
Well, I mean, look, that's great. We shouldn't be up to any number.
Okay.
Whatever family wants to move to our town should be allowed to be moving to our
You're
town.
saying within the family.
What's that?
You're saying within the family, though.
Right. Look, nowadays, family is a broad spectrum, okay? You have families, the traditional families, like my family, your family, and you have extended families that are same sex and with kids and all kinds of different things going on. What I'm saying is we don't need to be into the limiting somebody's wanting to move into Irmo to take advantage of our school district because they happen to have an extended big family and they find a house that's big enough for them to live into. You know, like I said, I got a 4-bedroom house with a finished room over the garage, which easily can be another bedroom. I got 2.5 baths. They can hold 10 kids comfortably in my house. Now, there's only 2 people living there right now, but we can certainly hold a bigger family in that house. And I have a big enough driveway to handle 2 cars in the garage and 2 more cars sitting in the driveway. You know, why should we be concerned with somebody who wants to rent their house out, whether it's a private owner, whether it's a commercial company? Why should we be concerned with how many people are coming into that house? Now, if they're living there comfortably and they're living there, you know, peaceably, we shouldn't be concerned with the number of people. I personally think this is overreach, but, you know, that's a different argument.
Well, you can if you want to. I mean, make an amendment to remove whatever that section is.
Well, we just amended to change the number from 8 to 10. I think that's what we're arguing right now.
Yeah,
We're
and we
discussing
can
right now.
we can make an amendment now.
Well, if this amendment passes, then I'll make another amendment or
Okay.
something else. But we're talking about changing this from 8 to 10 right now.
I think one of the issues is when you have a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom home, and now you have 10 people in that home, you're really taxing what that property was set up to do. We have issues with properties that have a small lot size.
Okay, and I agree. That's for that person who's living in a 2-bedroom house that has 10 people. Obviously, that's a stretch for that property. Okay, but now, what if I'm an owner and I live in that 2-bedroom house and I have to have 10 people living with me?
As an owner, you
There is
can
absolutely
do it.
nothing.
As an owner, you can do it. I think you're asking for trouble when you have 10 people living in a 2-bedroom home.
And
Oh yeah,
You're
you're
going to
absolutely
have
correct.
cars. You're going to have problems with cars.
You're absolutely correct.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. I think you're absolutely correct. I don't know personally, but yeah.
And HUD does, and I don't know exactly because I asked the person to send me some stuff, but I didn't get it, and I hadn't tried to search it.
Square foot.
But they do have some guidelines too, so there's probably a good reason. But again, we can take it out. I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying, stuff to start with, and we can amend it, change it, vote it down, edit. I don't, whatever.
And this is first reading,
That's right.
Yeah.
and maybe we'll hear from the public some ideas,
Right.
which would be
In
good.
between now and second reading, drive down Finsbury and leave the town of Irmo and drive the rest of Finsbury that is in Lexington and see all the college-occupied houses
Right.
around the corner. That's been a sore spot for Coatsworth for quite some time.
Right.
Understand?
Right.
And there's nothing the town can do about it, and the neighborhood can't either.
Yeah, because it's not in Irmo.
Lexington County.
Any more discussion on the amendment from 8 to 10? All in favor then of amending that from 8 to 10, do so with show of hands. All opposed? And do you want to make an amendment to delete that out and just see, or talk about that, or?
I have one question, Mr. Mayor, about the parking spaces. When I first got on council, I thought it would be nice if we could get owner-occupied houses and rental houses on the same page. But now we're going to tell an owner of a home that's going to rent the house out that you've got to pave your driveway with concrete or asphalt.
Yeah, that was something I was going to bring
And
up
we're
too.
telling homeowners you can put pine straw inside landscape timbers, which, by the way, Lowe's and Home Depot have a deal on the oval landscape timbers and mulch.
Yeah, if you want to add gravel or something else,
Well, I don't think we should restrict a person who's renting their house out to anything that's not going to be enforced on a homeowner. What makes them that different?
well,
I know it's a business.
if you build a business, they're going to tell you at an apartment complex, they're not going to let you gravel or pine straw or who knows what or whatever. In fact, they won't even let you do that when you build a home.
And
But
a business has to have a certain amount of
Right.
car spaces for.
Well, that's in the old
size of
ordinance.
lot.
It must be a paved surface,
Yeah.
and there must be one paved surface for each vehicle on the property, if it's a rental property. That's already in
not
there.
being 100%, I want to say, followed right now.
No.
This just kind of words it to me a little bit different, so the landlord can look at that and go, oh, I can't rent it to no more than 2 cars. Oh, if I have a driveway so wide and 25 foot long, then I can rent it to somebody with 4. And to me, it kind of lets them, I don't know, figure out what they can do or want to do. They may not want to put a. or
Do
they
you may want to change it to the way the other one's written?
Well,
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would say, and
I
this is just
understand the
me,
business aspect.
if we wanted to add gravel, that might be I don't call it a compromise or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know that doing the pine straw and mulch, because that was more or less a way of making it easy and affordable and whatever you call it. Not every investment property and rental property and owner is the same, but most of them, I was in real estate years ago when we bought homes all the time. Foreclosed homes, fixed them up, got somebody in them, and sold them to an investor. And some of them you did a lot of work to because you knew you could. Some of them you didn't because it wasn't going to make a bit of difference. But most of our homes in our neighborhood, you can get market rent for them if you do the right amount of work.
That's right.
Or you can not do market rent for them and rent it out dirt cheap.
Yeah.
But then you ain't got no money to fix them up. And I think that's where we're getting too
Right.
many of those, and we need more of the others, where people are willing to spend a few bucks and, maybe asking that investor to pour 25 foot of 8 foot wide concrete might be a little bit too much. Telling them to put gravel down might be okay. I don't know.
Well, if
but-
you had a family move in with 3 grown children or 2 high school, whatever, you need a provision for the 5th car. Something.
Oh, we have to go back and amend that zoning ordinance that says 4.
Yeah.
We
Or-
can,
been there
we
since
can write it for the next
2005.
reading, but we need some provision.
Or you could just say, well, they can't rent it to them, but then that's kind of what you're saying.
And
If
that may
that's-
be against the law.
Well,
I don't know. I'm just saying, you sell your car, you can't rent this house.
Well,
That doesn't sound
you're
good.
telling somebody that builds a building, you got to have adequate
Well-
parking for
Well,
15 cars or you can't
That's true.
move in.
Can they park on the street?
Technically, legally, yes.
They can, yes.
But
That
I
one
think the
car
whole
could
thing
park,
between
I
the rental home is, it's like at most businesses, you're not allowed to park off.
Sure.
You got to provide off-street parking of X amount of thing. Do people still do it? Yes. But technically, in an apartment complex, they would make you have off-street parking of whatever based on the rooms and square footage.
But
And the
this,
same thing for a
but
business.
this is not a business. This is not commercial. This is residential.
Well, if you look on the tax record, it is.
Well, because
It's
it's
6.
6%, but,
So
okay, so
there's a
we're gonna,
fine line between
are we
both.
gonna tell them all the commercial things applies and we can throw all this out? Okay, yep. Then we
So
need to,
what do you want to do? Change it to?
well, I don't know. I would wait till the second reading and we might put a semicolon and add an additional provision and see how people like. I don't have anything in mind right now.
I mean, we could put in there gravel. They could add, gravel or something like that.
I'd like to amend it to add gravel.
Okay, how? Give us a wording.
Well, let's get a
So in other
second.
words, driveways must be paved, or concrete or asphalt, or gravelled.
What would you say? Or paved with gravel?
Or
Contained gravel surface.
there you go.
Contained gravel surface.
Thank you, Eric.
And second,
I'll second it.
let me write this
No
down.
more than 5 vehicles?
Contain gravel. What do you say? Contain gravel what?
Surface.
Surface.
All right, any discussion on that?
No, I think that's reasonable.
Again, why are we concerned with the number of vehicles at the house? Will you say no more than 4 vehicles will be permitted with a double width driveway? Why are we concerned with controlling the number of cars a guy may have?
It's actually in our
We
zoning.
have a code in
Yeah.
the zoning area.
Why are we concerned with that?
It's
'Cause
the law
It's the zoning code.
Okay,
since
so
2005.
my point is this. So you telling me that I have 5 cars at my house, so I have to sell my car?
Park it on the street.
No
not
park on the
property.
street.
I mean, seriously. I mean,
But you own your home, so it's not a,
Well,
Yeah, it doesn't.
oh,
apply.
okay, so if I rent to somebody and they have 5 cars, you telling me I can't rent to that person because they have 5 cars?
well, it'd be
I
the
mean,
same thing if,
they certainly can park their 2 cars in the garage. I have a 2-car garage, and you can park 3 cars outside on the driveway. But you're telling somebody, nope, if you got more than 4 cars in this particular rental property, you can't live in Irmo.
Well, stop and read the sentence. No more than 4 vehicles will be permitted with a double width driveway. You put 4 on the double width driveway and 2 in the garage.
Or well, you could put one on a gravel
Oh,
surface.
one in the garage.
When you're gravel driveway. Yeah.
and let me ask this. We did a dilapidated building ordinance earlier this year, and we also amended that to address commercial properties. Why were we concerned about those things?
Well, we should make this for residential standards for rental and residential and commercial. You know, then we can comply to both.
Well, I don't know
Exactly
that I would
right.
vote for that on residential property that's owned by an individual, but we have all kind of guidelines on businesses.
Well, you
as far
should
as
say
parking
you said it's a
and square
commercial.
footage and,
You said rental properties are a business, so why don't call it residential and commercial rental standards? That applies to any kind of residential
well,
or
we already
commercial
got,
business.
on apartments, we already got standards for apartment complexes when they move in and build. That's already handled. But these have never been handled by anything.
Again, we're getting into control, and I don't like the fact that we are dilapidating it, but that's
Well,
fine. I mean, if
that
that's
is
what
part
we're
of,
looking at.
yeah, we do, and that's kind of why we have a zoning book this thick that controls all kind of zoning stuff as far as your parking and your square footage and your use and what can go next to what and how much bushes and trees and everything else you got to have.
Yeah, we're talking for a rental house. Somebody
No,
wants
we're
to rent
talking
their
about
house.
control. You brought up control.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what we're
renting
talking about.
for a rental house, right? Control
Your
for a
next door
rental
neighbor
property.
could rent their house out. How would you feel?
So,
That's
If they did
fine.
some things that,
no, he's got an HOA that will cover that.
well, since you brought up HOAs, in California, they seem to be having trouble with people renting out their garages as apartments. Like families living in a 2-car garage, and the HOA of several neighborhoods in Southern California now require that the garage doors be left open
Open.
by the residents.
Gracious.
Most of these ordinances came back from 2005. If you look at if you look in the code book, they are around 2005. Things have changed since 2005
Yeah, they have.
drastically.
Well, if we change the 4-car to 5 or whatever, do we have to go back and change it in the zoning book too?
I would imagine so, since the zoning.
Sure.
Since that's
Yeah.
that's zoning, that's everybody.
Yeah, I
Rental or
agree.
homeowner.
Yeah, because this is straight out of zoning.
well, the whole idea behind a lot of this too, right, or even that one, is getting the cars out of the grass.
Yeah.
Or off,
Saying,
or off
okay,
the street originally.
You know, if you're going to own a rental home, then you got to provide adequate parking for that rental home. What's adequate parking? That's up to us, kind of to decide. But I know in a lot of municipalities, Lexington and stuff, even when they build a new home, there's a guideline on the width and the length of the driveway. Now they let the builders include the garage, but the concrete has to hold 4 cars. Now, some of them let you include the garage, some of them don't. Some of them just say, well, the driveway needs to be so many feet wide and so many feet long, minimum. That's it. You don't build a house without it. And those builders have to meet those guidelines. Same thing here. We're just telling the landlord, if you want to rent that house, fine, that's good, we don't care. But you're going to provide adequate parking, so they're not parking in the yard.
And actually, this
Whatever
just
adequate
meets
is
zone,
is
it meets zoning. That's all it is. You're right.
But if we want to change it, we can change it. We just need to change it or leave it or whatever. Or wait till next time if let's come up with something different.
Well, next time, I hope we'll have more citizen input and maybe a few other ideas.
So any changes, any amendments, any more discussion? We've got the 8 to 10, and we've got the contained gravel surface. Any more changes?
Right, I thought we were just talking about that one amendment,
Well,
the gravel surface.
yeah, right now we're just on the gravel surface.
Right, so we're
Yeah, we
gonna
gotta
vote on that or what?
And then,
Okay.
but any more changes to the cars or anything or number?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got some other changes, but we're
Oh,
talking about the
okay.
parking spaces right now. We're gonna vote
So all
on
in
that?
favor then of this amendment, do so a show of hands.
The gravel?
Contained gravel surface.
Okay.
And all opposed. Any other amendments, changes, discussion?
Yeah, you talk about siding, 16, the siding, by adding a sentence, must be properly painted with no peeling and all that stuff. I thought we had that already in there.
That's in the dilapidated.
Yeah. Wasn't that in there?
Not peeling
Dilapidated?
paint? It
That wasn't
says
in
no rotten
dilapidated?
wood.
Yeah, so that's not covered in the dilapidated?
Well, the rotten wood be because it's in the rotten wood, but it doesn't, there's nothing in the
Concerning paint?
yeah, concerning.
Nothing in there concerning paint.
Okay. So for a rental property, we have to make sure it's properly painted and no peeling paint. But for commercial properties, they can have peeling paint and,
Well, if we need to get to that.
you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Because I got 2 complaints about that this week too, a
Right.
commercial property. But this is just rental.
I understand, but I'm saying that's how depth we're gonna get with that one, is to talk about the peeling paint on a rental property. And then the one thing I do agree with is, and wholeheartedly agree with, the utilities, number 21.
Yeah.
And only thing about that is that I'm concerned with, and again, it's just a small concern, is that we're gonna deem a property unrentable and unlivable if you don't have water, sewer, and electrical services connected to the proper provider. Well, sometimes when you have a rental property, you know, you let them cut the water off because you're not using it, you're showing the property. And I don't wanna deem that property unrentable because water's been cut off.
No, I think this means when they move in.
It doesn't say that to me, but maybe y'all can help me out and understand that.
Because you turn the power off sometimes too, or
Right.
you turn off everything.
Exactly.
But maybe we need to add upon,
Residency?
You could say any occupied
residence,
residential
occupancy.
rental,
yes,
On occupancy?
upon occupancy,
or just say
the
any,
dwelling shall have, yeah.
And just put upon occupancy in the beginning.
or just say any occupied residential. Just put occupied right there. At the first,
Okay,
second,
Yeah.
whatever you call it.
because it probably won't have all that running when it's being shown, but when they move in, it's got to have it.
So you want to
So we're saying then any residential rental?
Any occupied residential rental dwelling.
And why do we need to just concern ourselves with just residential? Why not commercial also?
because this only has to do with rental homes
With
here.
residential, okay.
We'd have
And
to go
water,
back to
sewer, and electricity, okay.
So if somebody want to make a motion to add that,
Yes, I make a motion.
I'll second it.
This is human needs.
alrighty. they're adding occupied to where it says any residential rental dwelling, it'll say any occupied residential rental dwelling. So just add the word occupied there. Any discussion? Any more discussion? All in favor then of,
One other question. What happens if we run out, if we have the electric cut off for 24 hours because they didn't pay the bill? Does that mean it's now deemed an unrentable property and they're fined $1,087 if we
Okay,
find out
repeat
about it?
that for me.
Let's say somebody didn't pay the electric bill and it gets cut off for a week or so.
Uh-huh.
Does that mean that they now become an unrentable, unlivable property and they get fined $1,087 because they got the electric cut off? Or potentially can get fined $1,087 because they got the electric cut off? Or water cut off, for that
I
matter.
don't know about that.
Or sewer cut off.
basically, yeah, what it would be saying is if any of that stuff is not on, must be on at all times, it shall be the responsibility of the property owner to ensure each dwelling has service, and the failure to do so will. So it really, if I'm reading that, Eric, what I would be saying is it's my responsibility as the property owner to make sure the sewer is connected. But if the water and the electrical service aren't, then it's not my responsibility, it'd be the tenant's.
It's common for the landlord to put electrical and water, or do more electrical than anything else on the tenant. But to answer Bear's question, kind of, we would bait that. So, you know, if you did get if you had your electricity go out because you didn't pay your bill, and for some reason somebody found out that you didn't have electricity going on in your house, and they had to go out and find out about it, they would receive an abatement and would have an opportunity to remedy that situation, the same as they would with any code enforcement type issue.
But we come out and issue a $1,087 ticket.
After the abatement,
Yeah, we would just issue an abatement.
yeah, after they've been given a chance to fix it. We don't
We come out and hassle them and give them a $1,087 abatement notice saying if you don't fix it, you're gonna get a ticket.
I think it's one of the misconceptions that we keep having in here in these meetings is that we do not go out and hand out $1,087 tickets. I'm doing one this time. I'm doing one for grass this term next week.
$1,087?
I don't. That's what the maximum fine would be in this particular case. You notice this particular person 3 separate instances, and then and only then was that person given a citation. It's not like these officers are going out and saying, "Oh, grass isn't cut to 8 inches. Here's an $1,100 ticket. Pay it." They're given an abatement notice. They're given a chance to fix it, and in that particular case, multiple chances to fix it. So it's not like it's not like if you park in downtown and you didn't feed the meter and you come back to a ticket. It's not like that. It's they give you a warning, Eric. You should put a quarter in this thing, or we might give you a ticket.
And these are rental properties, Barry. They got 30 days. The abatements are 30-day abatements on rental properties to get it fixed. So it's not like they're going to get a ticket in 10 days.
And isn't the water meter in the owner's name still?
No.
Typically, although I have heard of
No.
instances where the renter will end up taking the lease to the water. And
Yeah.
Well, they go and have it put in their name so they get the bill, but the meter stays in the owner's name.
That's right. The meter itself is in there.
Yes, because if they move out and
Goes with the deed.
don't pay the bill, the owner of the property pays it. I've found that out
Yes.
myself
Yeah, I
before.
misunderstood your question. Yes, you're right. The actual meter is the owner's.
Any more discussion? And let's see, we're on the occupied. All in favor then of adding the word occupied to that, do so with show of hands. Oh, I think you vote, okay. Any other changes, amendments, whatever, discussion?
Mr. Mayor, council may want to consider changing the title while we're on that. From rental property registration to maybe registration and regulations. It's not just a registration any longer like it was when we first adopted it
So it's
years ago.
And regulation?
And regulations.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to add regulations to the title. Is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor of adding regulations to the title, do so with show of hands. And so here are the changes. We got regulation added to it. We've got 8 changed to 10. We got contained gravel surface added up there next to asphalt. We got occupied, and that's it. 1, 2,
One other thing, is there, the annual fee? It says here the annual fee should be $200 for the first dwelling. I thought you just said it was $100.
Well, it's $200. The annual license fee shall be $200 for the first dwelling, $100 each after that. If the license is applied for and granted before leasing or renting the dwelling, then there's a 50% reduction. So if you renew your current license, permit, whatever they call that, or if you come into town when you buy the home and get it, then it's $100 for the first one, $50 after that. If you buy the house, fix it up, rent it out, and then somehow or another we catch it through that software and through that thing from the county, and we knock on somebody's door and they go, yeah, I rent the house out, it's been rented, I don't know, 6 months, 2 months, whatever, then it's $200 when you come into town and get it.
Why don't you say that why don't you do it the other way? Why don't you say
But I think it's-
$50 or $100 for the first house and $50 for each additional house? And there would be I guess a penalty. Instead of a deduction applied, there'd be a 50% penalty applied if you don't do it by.
I just like doing it that way because it made a little bit more, I won't say sense to me, that if you do it up front, you get the reduction. Because I know some people that said it didn't cost any more, didn't bother them, they were not going to get it.
Yeah, but if you tell them it's going to be $200, I'm looking at that saying, oh, I got to pay $200 for the first dwelling, and yeah, there'll be a 50% reduction applied, or just say it's $100.
Somebody mentioned to me that these were the highest fees
Yeah.
in the Midlands. I think, wait till the second reading. I'm gonna call and find out, because I don't know what the fee is in Forest Acres or
They're all
KC or
between 50 and
anywhere.
100, they're all-
Yeah,
all-
but I want to call and find out. If you'll wait till second reading, I'll have an answer.
But none of the rest of them have penalties either.
That's true.
Yes,
Well, I don't know, because I
So
have,
this kind
I
of
thought
just,
Columbia did, though. I thought Columbia did.
I don't know, well, the stuff that I had looked at was probably whenever we passed it years ago.
yeah.
I don't know how many years that was, but that was when I had that stuff from Columbia and Casey and I don't know who
I
else.
think it's recent.
Yeah, because when we moved here in '86, we still rented our house in Shandon till '93, and it was $100 a year then.
Wow.
Okay, I'm gonna check and see,
Yeah.
just so we'll know. I don't want to be the highest price, but I want to be in line with everyone else.
Any more changes? All in favor then of 1804 with the 1, 2, 3, 4 amendments, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next is 1805. This is the one where we're adding that word appliances to the list of stuff. Is there a motion for first reading of 1805?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question first, then y'all can discuss. This adding following trash, appliances, and construction, I couldn't find the original one to go back to read that sentence.
Well, it should be on your computer
It's
now.
the con code right here.
It
No,
says no garbage,
not on
trash,
here, it's on
construction
the- okay.
material, brick. So they're just sticking it right in there between trash and construction material.
So no garbage, trash, appliances, okay. Okay, the appliances makes more sense than the 5-gallon bucket.
Well, believe it or not, there's a
I know, but I'm opposed to the 5-gallon container.
couple homes out there with stuff just sitting with 5-gallon buckets in them.
They may be collecting rainwater
No,
And
these have just got,
mosquitoes.
And mosquitoes.
and mosquitoes, but they might be.
some of them just got junk in them. Well, I don't think they do anymore because I think they got rid
Well, I
of them.
don't have objections to anything else.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Oh,
You're saying that the appliances, again, this is a need because people are putting washing machines out in front of the house?
Yeah, some of them throw them in that ditch behind their house that
well, and
has
some of them are just piled up
obstructed
in their backyard while they're
Yeah.
working on them or whatever. But since we didn't have this in our ordinance, when code enforcement tried to address it, it wasn't in there. So it really wasn't against the ordinance,
Does Tyler pick up appliances?
if they're called.
If they're called, okay.
That's the biggest thing that people don't understand. They get a call.
You got to call, and you have to schedule it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do but 2 major items a year or 3 or whatever,
2 a
then
month.
use your neighbor's 3.
And
you
there
know,
are businesses that will collect them
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
scrap.
well, there's a lot of,
There's a guy in New Friarsgate that'll pick up appliances
Yep.
and I've got his name.
He does it over. Yeah.
And when you buy a new one, be sure that they'll take your old one.
They usually do when they install the new one. Okay.
any more discussion? All in favor then, first reading of 1805, do so with show of hands. Next is the appointment to the Elk Strut Commission. We have a vacancy, and this is the lady who serves on the Women's Club that they gave you her name. Is that correct? Go ahead.
There's a vacant seat on the Oak Strut Commission caused by resignation of Kathy Campbell. Kathy Campbell was the representative of the Lake Murray Women's Club temporarily. Heather Hardy's also a member, and she served to represent them. She's asked to be relieved of that. Phyllis Hawkins was recommended, or their recommendation. The Oak Strut Commission voted unanimously to ask you guys to add her to the seat.
I make a motion, we accept her.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor then of Phyllis Hawkins to be appointed, do so with show of hands. Next is presentation by citizens. This is where anyone who wants to address council on anything, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not, all we ask is you give us your name and address for the record.
Who is that masked man?
Away. Earl Silver. Played by, who was the actor that played
Oh, Lord.
Lone Ranger?
The Lone Ranger?
Yeah, who was the actor?
Can't remember.
Well, Jay Silverheels was Tonto.
Yeah,
I got
didn't
that
ask
one.
that. We'll get back to that. So, that should keep all of us that are over 60 years old awake tonight. Of course, you're researching it on the internet. Thank God, Mr. Poyet, for the internet. I'm George Glassmeyer at 110 Beck Road. I'd like to talk to you about the various proposals that we just endured to the residential rental regulations. I have a number of thoughts about that. First of all, as it was pointed out by a number of people, when a house turns from owner-occupied to a rental, it becomes a business at that point. And I don't think it's unreasonable to place restrictions on businesses that are not on owner-occupied houses. The second thing, that the mayor brought this up early on, is that apparently under the existing scheme, there's no incentive for landlords to renew their license on time. Let me submit this suggestion to you. If code enforcement determines that a landlord has failed to renew, what's to prevent them from issuing an abatement notice and proceeding criminally for that violation of town ordinance? 1087.50 might get their attention. That should be a deterrent, but you've got to enforce that. Also, as I looked at the existing statutory scheme for the fees, it occurred to me that I could turn my house into decide to turn my house, which is owner-occupied now, into a rental next week and come into Town Hall tomorrow and say, Town Hall, I'm going to, or Bob, I'm going to start renting my house out next week, I want to apply for the rental license and pay for it in cash today, and he takes the money. So therefore, I'm entitled to the 50% reduction. When renewal time comes up, I don't renew. 6 months later, Bob called me and said, George, you didn't renew. I said, okay, I'll be in right away, but I want my 50% reduction because I applied initially before I began renting it. So if you read the existing scheme, I think I'm entitled to that 50% deduction in perpetuity. It doesn't say that renewals have to be done timely. Maybe that's just the lawyer in me thinking and looking at the ordinance, but I'd certainly be happy to represent somebody that might have that argument. Also, let's think about this. These restrictions give landlords some cover if somebody should come to them and say, I want to rent this two-bedroom house and I got 15 kids. It gives him some cover in saying, well, even if I wanted to, I can't because town ordinance won't allow me to do that. That gives that landlord some cover to do that. And finally, there's some health and safety considerations about how many people you put in a structure. Do we want a situation where there's a house fire in New Friarsgate in a two-bedroom house and 12 kids die in that fire because it turns out that there were 15 people living in it? And we had nothing, and we didn't have anything in place to prevent that. Is that what you want? Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Clayton Moore.
It came to me at the same moment.
Oh, and I didn't use my computer.
Next is, well, anybody else?
Yes, he is.
Next is discussions and.
With the silver book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm Jackie Canoy at 161 Elstow Road. In my case, our neighbors have a appliance business that they have moved from North Main Street to their backyard. It has been hundreds of appliances. He says that he has moved his business to Two Notch Road, which is, I don't really believe that because they put the appliances in these buildings. First of all, he had 3 buildings. They made him get rid of one of them. He took an axe to it, and it is still sitting beside his, the current building now. That seems to be a code of 1805 right there, that he's just leaving this there. So it appears to me that kudos to Irmo Police Department, but he's telling them that he's getting around it every single time. He's still putting appliances in there. He's figured out now that if you can't see it from the road, then I'll just move it to the other side of the yard in the back. You know, that way they won't see it. But my concern is, we've already had to put $1,200 in a fence to prevent this. We cannot sell our house unless we show our house at night. I just don't know. If he has a business on Two Notch Road, why does he have all of his appliance trucks that he brings in appliances every single day? I saw him in there last night. He's putting appliances in that building. I haven't seen him working on it, but it's all to the left now of the yard. So he's figured out ways to get around this, but it's very unsightly from our yard. And you know, I don't really know a solution to it.
Let me see a picture.
It is.
Let me see a picture.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what road do you live?
Elstow.
Elstow. Okay, got it. I was on Elstow last week.
I mean, if we don't enforce each ordinance that we have, it's just going to continue to get worse. But everybody has to be on the same page. You know, if you're going to get rid of the appliances, you know, what's going to prevent them from bringing them back to the yard? Or if you can't see it from the road, well, then we just put it to the left of the backyard. So I really don't know a solution to that, but it's very unsightly for us. And I would suggest that if it's unsightly, if they're going to have all that in their backyard, why isn't it to their expense to put up a fence? That would be a whole solution to the problem.
Like a privacy fence?
If they would put up a privacy fence all the way around their yard to where when out my side door, that I don't have to see this because, I mean, what am I going to have to do? How high can a fence get? Did we not go high enough?
Do those two vehicles stay in that backyard too all the time?
That was another question of mine. How many vehicles can you park in the backyard?
There can only be 4 on the whole property.
Well, there you go. There's another one.
When you turn off of
I'm sorry.
when you turn off of Friarsgate Boulevard onto Elso,
Yes, sir.
is it on the right side?
Yes, sir.
I know.
Go all the way down, turn it on the right.
I saw that the other day.
Not on South.
Now he has another truck there. It's a white truck. He's got 2 appliance trucks, and he's got trailers all in the backyard. He's got appliances all in the backyard. He has building that he has tore down, trying to prevent a $1,000 fee, and it's still there. Not to mention all the other junk that's in his backyard. Is that something that, I mean, I'm not nitpicking. I'm not a nitpicker, but that's got to
right
be.
down from that one.
So code enforcement's been addressed this issue several times. We've been over there. I've been.
Yeah, more than once.
The way the yard is sitting, if you're in the street, you look to the backyard, it's a hump. And there's a natural earth right there, and you can't see the backyard. You can see a car, not like that much of a car, but, and also about the appliances,
You can see the big shed in the back.
yeah, you can see sheds and
Or the
stuff.
building or whatever.
I mean, I spoke to him, he says, yeah, I mean, I work on these things in the garage. I'm not selling anything. I'm not running a business. I don't have to.
That's how he gets away with
Yeah,
it.
I'm just fixing things. Now, if we want to take away the ability to fix things in people's yards, I don't know what to say about that. I don't know.
Well, our ordinance doesn't cover it right now.
Correct.
We can say it's a hobby, because not really having retail, people come over and
Maybe
pick up
he-
at his yard. That's part of the problem.
But we did get rid of one of the buildings, and what I'm understanding, he just collapsed it right there, and it's kind of sitting there. But again, from the roadway, you can't
Can't see it.
violations. So that's what we were running into.
Also, can I say one other thing? Now that he's brought the other truck in, he's parked beside the Mercedes that he has on our side, the black Mercedes. It's in the front yard. He has parked his SUV beside of it too. So I'm to the point now to where is it even worth saying anything? Because he's just going to keep doing things. He has another car out there with broken windows in the front yard. Another car. So he's finding ways to get around all these things. I mean, do I just turn my head?
That's been the
Do I
problem.
build
Too
a-
many people turn their head. The neighbors that live behind him, those houses that are in the picture that are back, have they complained about him too?
Yes, they have a problem with their dog. It's a dog issue, and that will come up.
Who's got the dog?
My next door neighbor has 2 pit bulls.
That man?
That have gotten
Yes,
out.
ma'am.
Okay, I know about those dogs.
One
Yes,
attacked the
ma'am.
lawnmower.
He killed one of his pit bulls killed the inside dog. They left out by accident, and they got out of their pen because he pins them together. Then they attacked the dog and the neighbor behind them, and the guy got tired of it, and 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, he went to the door and told them you know, either you contain these dogs and keep them put in a pen, or I'm calling animal control.
I'm confused. Who has the dogs? The guy that has this
The appliance guy has
Oh,
these.
okay.
The reason we put the fence up anyway is because of a dog issue. They were chewing our lawnmower through the fence. We couldn't mow our yard. But we let that go on and on and on. We put the fence up and just said forget about it. But it's been an ongoing thing. I mean, this is a whole different issue. I mean, he puts the dogs in a pen. It's got poop all in it. I mean, it's awful. I can't. The backyard just smells. So, this trash can's full of poop. I don't care about that. I mean, I know that's unsanitary, but I'm more concerned about, keep getting away with issues like this and knows how to get around it. And what's my solution?
Have you talked to this guy?
I have not talked to this guy. No, sir.
Other people have. I know who she's.
He is not, we've talked to him before. We talked to him about the dog situation, but he's the kind of person that you can't talk to. It's always somebody else's fault, so. And
Well-
right now, he's not happy with us at all.
Well, you're talking to the right person here. That I believe will look into it for you.
Well, thank you.
Well, the chief and I have both been over there.
We've been, are you pointing to him or me?
Okay, you, George, handle that, would you?
No, me and Bob, he got in the car with me and we drove over there. We talked to the guy.
Load them up and move them out.
We sent
Yeah.
law enforcement over there a number of times on a number of complaints.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know what else to say.
Well, what law is he violating by having appliances out in the backyard?
You will violate 1805 after you.
That's right. That was just added. Thank you, Mayor, for all your help.
Well, if he's got more than 4 vehicles on his property, he is.
He keeps adding them. I think he's just doing that for.
Now she's saying he's got 3 in the front, so there's 4.
The dogs are well known. I know about it.
There's no room. He's in front of his house, which is a violation too.
Yeah,
He's right beside our driveway. Now he's got his SUV there, and then on the other side of his circle driveway, he's got a car sitting there with 2 broken windows on it, taped up. And then he parks his U-Save appliance van beside of it, and now he has that white clothes truck now. So they have like 7 vehicles. He's got a new business vehicle truck.
Okay, well, we'll address it tomorrow. We'll go over there tomorrow.
So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you for adding appliances to that.
And anyone else? Okay. And now we got discussions. And Councilman Walker, you asked for this, so I'll let you lead off.
We had like I said, I had a constituent call me about the noise that was generated, shaking the tables and shaking the china in his house. I thought he would be here tonight to explain it a little more in detail because I wasn't quite understanding through his correspondence what he was talking about. But the question I have, is there a law or noise ordinance about sounds being generated through the ground?
No, I've talked to this gentleman twice,
Mhm.
and I understand his problem. Police officers have been over there, the guy is playing the stereo in his one house,
Mhm.
and he's got the bass turned up, but it's not so loud that the neighbors around him are complaining because it's not loud. Police officers have been over there twice on the record that Bobby gave me, and the sound's not coming out of the house. And this gentleman lives 5 houses away, and he says that the sound is traveling under the ground and coming up and vibrating in his house. I don't understand, but we have nothing.
He lives 5 houses away? 5 houses?
5 houses over. But the people around this house, nobody's complaining or calling, just him. Because he said the sound waves are
Okay.
I understand it, but we have no ordinance that covers it.
No, I understand. And again, I was hoping he'd be here to explain to us what's happening. He's not, so I don't know if it was an issue or not, but I told him I'd put it on the agenda so we can talk about it.
I don't understand how it can happen when police officers not hear nothing when they go over there and the neighbors
Well,
have the same vibrations.
has he explained how he knows it's this person's home as opposed to somebody else's?
He did not elaborate. He says he's pinned it down. He knows exactly who it is. Again, I don't know, but I know that he's called the police officers, and I know they responded the 2 times. But they
Well, what,
not like loud noises that you can hear from.
So it's not violating the noise ordinance.
He's not.
What street is this on? Not address, but what area of town is
I
this?
don't recall. Well, Bobby knows because I asked him last week.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. He knows which one it is.
Okay.
We'll find out.
I'm texting him right now. Back and forth, and then the Officer Stokes over to look at, he gets off. Officer Stokes.
That's fine. No, I don't remember a street, no.
You know, if it was in a municipality that had culverts under the streets, I can see what sound might
Yeah, I
transmit, but we don't.
I don't know.
Could we look at a
I'm a musician.
CD
Talk to me about loud
stormwater,
noises
see if there's any
coming out your garage.
stormwater's running up underneath that area?
I would go in the man's house and see if I could hear it before I did anything.
But he said you can't hear it, it's vibrating.
Well,
It's a vibration. It's not a noise.
Yeah. Like my
you
shop,
can feel it, right?
I have to push stuff up
I haven't been to his house.
on my
Now,
shelves in there
I
all the
play
time.
my music loud.
But that's from the
feel
train.
it, too.
The train comes through and vibrates, and
yeah.
stuff moves around. I have to go around every now and then. If I don't,
It'll fall.
every now and then I'll come in and something's on the floor, and I'm thinking, huh, but it vibrated off.
Yeah, well.
But that's from the train because I'm real close to it. But it may be that there's a, I'll call it a sewer pipe or a stormwater pipe or who knows what. We could check.
Well,
Because we can get a map of Richland County sewer when that neighborhood was built. That kind of shows where all that stuff is, can't we? Stormwater?
I honestly don't know. We can look into it.
well, look, we don't.
They do not have stormwater maps.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, look, I'm not trying to get into a long, in-depth discussion of something that I don't really understand. Like I said, I hope that he would be here to explain to us what the problem is. He's not here. Obviously, it's not a big enough problem for him to be here. So I'll wait until he comes to
A later
council.
date.
Okay, good.
All I know is that.
Alrighty. Next is executive session unknown. Next is adjournment. Any,
I move we adjourn.
in a second.
Second?
All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
eyeball. I said eyeball.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Huh? You didn't like that one? Eyeball?